A Beastly Comedy, Canto 1.5. When Dante's quill ran out of ink, he had described a hell, unlike the mud we plodded through, and ducts containing tears, which like rebellious angels from the bloodless heaven fell. A mountain higher, colder grown, I feel the weight of years. The river flowing I should weep, divulge the secret pain. But reason has the streams suppressed, the mind assembling wears. Redeemer, will you break the bonds that rivulets constrain? Restricted by expected heirs, in grief appearing stout, my passions are destroyed because I dignity maintain. Avoiding seeming like a fool, I must devotion doubt, yet ecstasy I know requires imprudence in delight. Not visions of a vengeful God, reprisals meted out. Do crooked hands abuse the earth, and sulking sinners smite, like when you scoured the dusky woods for paths toward the day? And can I cure the lack of care by traipsing in the night, observing justice being dealt among the creatures fey? I cannot see advantage in perceiving bodies bound, enduring immortality, continuous decay. Redeemer, you insult the Lord who turns the world around, the planets, quasars on the spheres instructed by his law, to move across the ceiling and to dance without a sound. No longer do I know exact the visions that I saw, for eons in the cave elapsed since I rejoined the light, and longer I have sailed the seas, attempting to explore advances in the sciences which supple minds excite. The intellect without desire is in the forest lost, and baffled by technology, inventions such as flight. Yet even if humanity more barriers has crossed, we struggle with morality, although we share the view that selfishness as much as hate will always have a cost. Though Yahweh has become a tale and nothing seems taboo, I reckon you must have beliefs and causes of concern, identical to songs I knew as absolute and true. Residing on a distant moon or comet, you might learn to live without a moral code, but even then, I think, your language would define the stars to honor or to spurn. A skeptic, like a squid alarmed, distressed releases ink. Escaping from the social norms, the libertines resist, while Tories on their raft of rules believe they cannot sink. Like roots support and nourish trees, the anthropoids exist, abiding by divine decrees, a sense of truth innate, or laws defining when to squeeze the weapon in your fist. So how could I destroy the chains that keep a person straight, when either courtrooms, nature, God, or languages us bind, and guilt, the greatest force of mind, instructs us not to hate? Distinct from rivers in ravines that rush but never wind, my feelings were meandering, reflecting on his views. The stalactites above my head I rollicked and repined, the poet sounding self-assured, yet looking at my shoes. The countenance congenial, the answers imprecise, revealed between sincerity and faith he had to choose. A hogget in a slaughterhouse, I needed his advice. The shepherd, conscious of the price the adults have to pay for freedom on the forage field to revel in our vice. The fodder uncollected and the manger void of hay, or cattle unprotected from the hoof and mouth disease, the herd by worms infected and the conjunctivus grey. His arguments intangible uncertainty to ease were not effective, since I saw the posture of his head, the conflict of the faculties, to worry or to please, the ward he wished adventurous, who timid was instead. Suspecting that my guide polite avoided being mean, I asked a question indirect about the figures dead, Could you describe the crowds ahead, depict the dismal scene, explain by means of lucid verse, or draw a simple sketch? Reveal if we must meet in hell a demon crowd obscene, like in the cantos which have made repenting readers wretch? Or would you think an abstract tale development subserves much better than impressions that your poems used to etch? A poet is a scientist who images observes, acknowledging the mysteries the keys unknown imply. Religion or philosophy yet scrutiny deserves, without the need to dangle from a symbol like the sky, to prove transcendent visions or the notions less concrete, exist although convictions are dependent on the eye. For subtlety is sacrificed when poems are replete with icons, signs and metaphors, audition, touch or smell, while intricate beliefs remain concealed behind the beat. In theories, abstractions and morality I dwell, because explicit actions may my values vaguely show, yet aspects not evinced by deeds in prose I have to tell. Is rapture in my heart revealed by wiggles of a toe, a smile, a figure traced in sand, a dance, a kiss, a fire? Delight I have experienced that you could never know, from watching how I move my hands or croaking frogs admire. The gratefulness towards the Lord, my one insistent thought, the notion that the world is just and sacred my desire, the fruit of life within my reach by trusting fingers caught. Absorption in a science is destructive during wars, and reason hypothetical has devastation brought. How often minds inquisitive expect to hear applause, discoursing in their private clubs as brutish brothers fight. You must not be a thinking beast who broken bones ignores, so let us see the intellects, oblivious though bright. We walked across the silty clay to figures on the floor, like Navajo depictions for a hallowed healing rite, as men who practice medicine can accurately draw a story using triangles, ellipses, diamonds, squares, with ratios harmonious, the lines without a flaw. But I was hardly born to hear the softly chanted prayers, and coloured sand was not outpoured for pilgrims to perceive. Distracted as I sauntered near the shapes resembling bears, the poet like a panther rushed and leapt to clutch my sleeve. Do not disturb the circle small, for lifeless though they seem, the forms contain the scientists whose outlook was naive. The abstract-looking entities devised a neutral scheme to fathom out a mystery, how particles decay, except electrons, photons, or neutrinos in the beam. Obsessed with laws, uranium and hydrogen obey, they calculated orbitals with undisputed views, but when the bombs defaced the earth, they little had to say. Are concepts apolitical that engineers can use, supposedly to peace promote, with cannonries they build? A soldier who partakes in war emotions stands to lose, yet equally with ignorance are sisters, brothers killed. As if they should remain aloof and no positions take, the scientists insouciant were stupid although skilled. The secular ability their burdens to forsake did not negate incumbencies, eradicate regret, and culpable for negligence unstable figures break. Aware of lines and polygons, they complex forms forget, and fated for eternities these caverns to adorn, the physicists have been reduced to curves to pay their debt. The bitter, bookish voice revealed a poet feeling scorn, who aqueous disturbances proceeded to create, by stomping near the patterns or the marks precisely drawn. How did the loons experience the ripples of his hate, and can they see the truth in how the liquid clay behaves? The tremors travelled through the sand, an oscillating state. but do the victims understand or feel approaching waves? The ovals and the rhomboids seemed despondent in their guilt, the circles moaning like the wraiths arising from their graves. In 2 dimensions of the mind, the beings made of silt, perhaps synthetic reasoning, analysis apply, computing but not seeing how their space could be a tilt, or how the soul's geometry might curvature imply, the undulation of dismay which bends the mental plane. Excluded from the moving death in which we learn to cry, they recognize the ripples as anomalies, not pain. Thus where emotions are denied, the vision is unclear, and intellect without concern but shadows can explain, as horror shakes the plainer world, while figures have no fear. Escort me where the sinners are aware of life, I said, lest I become a broken ball, a fractured sobbing sphere, reflecting on existence as a square alive, yet dead.